I've looked to my right, Deji. I've looked to my left, AJ. These partners stink of poo, is what I can say about my current roommates. Some might say that I'm just overreacting, but these guys have done things that make me so angry. For context, I've been living away from home because of school and my sport. The team is actually kind enough to let me live in one of their apartments, so I won't complain. But unfortunately, I have to share the apartment with two teammates, and I will allow myself to complain about them. I moved in back in August. Everything was fine. I had two roommates. Let's call them Michael and Jim. Starting with Michael, he was actually good. Keyword was. It was his second year at the apartment, so he knew his ways around. He showed me how everything worked, and so on. He had what is, in my opinion, the best attribute someone can have, which is discipline. He would cook for himself, go to bed at a reasonable hour, and clean after himself. At the beginning, we never spoke. But since we were forced to eat 3 meals a day at the same table, we started talking and became really good friends. We managed to organize how we wanted things to work, like who vacuums which parts of the apartment and when, or who cooks for the gang on given days, or even how we were going to cover grocery expenses since we knew that we were going to take each other's food out of the fridge. So Michael was great. I have no complaints about him. On the other hand, you have Jim. At the beginning, he made it seem like he was enthusiastic, that he cared about us and the place in general. The thing is, through his attempt, we could still kind of notice an awkward personality. Discussions with Jim were dry. We would, for example, bring up a subject and he'd immediately say something like, "Damn, that's crazy," or "Really?" and not add anything more to it. He would just repeat keywords from phrases in the discussions, or stare at you like a pick-me girl when things didn't make sense to him. Also, his sense of humor is odd. He never really gets jokes, and then you have to explain it in detail, completely ruining punchlines. And when he tries to make some himself, he just ends up saying something uncreative and hateful, like bad things towards minorities. Anyways, everything is going well. We're laughing, having fun, until things start falling apart, obviously. It starts off by discovering that Jim doesn't know how to cook. He's literally at the ripe age of 19 and can't even start an oven. We insisted on teaching him how to make food. Plus, he was literally telling teammates that he was going to learn how to make food. When he agreed, he would just end up watching us for 5 minutes and then going back to his room to watch TikTok full blast. That's another issue about him. Since this guy doesn't really try to go sleep at a reasonable hour, he just watches TikTok till 1 in the morning, and it's so loud that you can hear it through closed doors. So from that point, there's just two of us making meals. Then we find out that Jim is also pretty cheap. Mind you, that his parents are businessmen. He even has his own car, but despite all that, he avoids paying his share of the groceries. Another thing about this dude is that he seems dependent on others. He can't do anything by himself, always asking people to join him when he needed or wanted to go do something. Like, he would ask us to go get food like 40 minutes away from where we live, and if nobody accepted, he'd just start harassing until one changed their minds. At the beginning, we would go with him like, "Cool, thanks for the ride," although we lost 3 hours for some mid-restaurant. But as time went on, he would turn these free rides into a sort of trap, using the excuse of, "Oh, I'm using gas on you guys, so to compensate, you have to pay my lunch." Although he's the one asking us to go eat out. So eventually we just stopped going and he dropped the concept. The final straw, or straws, because he did me dirty twice, was when he was out of town with a teammate and he calls me asking if I can prepare something for them. And I say, sure, why not, because I was raised right. I make a bolognese and leave it on the stove because I assumed he was going to be home soon. The next fucking day, I find the food untouched. They went to McDonald's. The disrespect genuinely turned me into a better man. It made me realize how manners we think can be brushed off actually hurt the people on the receiving end. It tripled my respect towards my family, basically. I made a scene, got him to pay me $20, and never cooked for him again. The other thing happened throughout a longer period of time. In September, when I could still tolerate this dude, I went out with him and a teammate to another city. Now, I love listening to music. It gets me going. keeps me motivated, disciplined, joyful. What music does right. I have these Marshall headphones that were gifted to me by my father, and I cherish them heavily. I remember having them with me in the city. After the night out, he drops me off home, but when it was kind of too late, I realized that I had forgotten them in the car. I was 100% positive that I hadn't forgot them in the city because I always have them on my head, not my ears, out of respect for the people that are around me when I'm at hangouts, for example, or around my neck. And when I leave certain places, I make sure they're with me. But I let my guard down in the car, naturally. I asked him to look for me at least twice a week, and he kept telling me he couldn't find them. Every time I got into his car, I checked the seats, glove box, trunk, anything. I had personal issues at that time and was feeling really down. And well, without my headphones, I couldn't at least make myself feel slightly better. So after a month without music, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I found a store that had the exact same headphones on sale, so I bought them. Another week goes by. I'm happy I got my music, and I end up in Jim's car again. Lo and fucking behold, I look below my feet, and on this random Tuesday, I have two pairs of the same headphones. They were not even hidden under the seat. They were just half visible, poking out, staring at me, smiling. I tried returning the new ones, but they refused, obviously, because they were out of the box, but it was worth a shot. Anyway, my brother didn't have headphones, so I gave the old pair to him, so at least I made someone happy. And I don't know, I feel like I didn't get back at Jim hard enough about what he had done to me for the headphones. But honestly, after so much time without the headphones, I think the anger kind of watered down. But okay, back to Michael. We're living life, playing Clash until midnight at the dinner table, after eating, making dumb videos with our gameplay, but God forbid we have fun, because the team kicks him out for not being good enough. There was no clear explanation, but yeah, one day he's there, the other he's not. And to be honest, he was just this big athletic dude who had skill at the sport, so I really don't understand why they got rid of him. Anyways, that's just how things are. I can't complain anymore, things are done. But I feel really bad for him because he had been injured the entirety of last season, and seeing him eat ice cream for dinner just sucked. So all of a sudden, I'm by myself in this apartment because Jim also suddenly decided he's too cool for the place and went back to living with his parents, while still possessing the key to his room. He could have given his room to a guy that doesn't want to travel to practice, or a guy that had to pay for his own apartment. He willingly decided to tank extra car trips. This same guy that was complaining to us that he was wasting gas, driving around all the time. And so, yeah, he tanks these trips in the morning instead of sleeping in his free room, which could have saved him an hour of sleep every time. Anyways, now we're in October. I'm losing my mind because I miss my family. The place is kind of isolated. It's getting cold, it's getting dark, and I have to travel a lot to go to school, which is basically wasting my days at this point. But after one practice, I come home to a flooded kitchen. A pipe under the sink had burst and let a bunch of water out. Now I'm panicking. I managed to fix it with mostly tape, re-screwing screws, valves, and by putting a bucket under the pipe because it would still leak when we let water flow. I notified the landlord, who also works for the team that I play for and who's literally my next door neighbor. He says, yeah, I'll send someone. The calmest reaction even after I had sent him pictures. He doesn't even get out of his seat, walk from one door to another to come check what's happening. Unfortunately, there's an unreachable space below the sink, and it was keeping water, and little by little it was getting absorbed into the kitchen's wooden floor. I was tolerating the darker floor while waiting for help, but again, one evening I came back home and the wooden tiles are just popping out of the floor because of the water. So I talked to the guy again, and he says, yeah, I'll call someone. Now, the reason I don't call anyone myself is because, well, it's not my apartment. There's a language barrier between me and the town folk. and I especially do not want to pay for services or new tiles. Now, I don't want to talk bad about Michael, but I called him about the sink and he tells me that it's been a long-lasting problem. Just that he forgot to tell me about it and it could have been fixed by just tightening up a valve under the sink every now and then. But even the past guys never did anything about it. So now I feel like crap when I have to go to the kitchen because there's a hole basically. But good news finally hits when I find out a new teammate is moving in. Let's call him William. I'm happy I'll get to socialize because we speak the same language, so this is convenient. He moves into Michael's room, obviously, because the other room is vacant and locked 24/7. Upon meeting him, I explain all the rules, like vacuuming duty and that the sink pipe needs to be adjusted from time to time, in addition to the bucket needing to be emptied every time you notice that it's getting full while we wait for help, and he agrees. So cool. But it's with time that I'll realize that this guy isn't, in fact, cool. But for now, it's fine. We play Fortnite and go to the gym together. But one day, Jim finally decides to come back for a night. And I don't know about this. I wasn't there when it happened. And I also didn't tell you this, but Michael left his bed and a desk in his room because it belonged to the apartment itself. This was furniture that has been passed down from guy to guy, and William was using it. I kid you not, Jim goes to William's room and tells him that he needs to give him the desk because he paid it for Michael. This asshole took this guy's desk that he had never paid for and locked it in his room for another 3 months. And he did it while William's girlfriend was there. I tried getting Jim to return the desk, but he's a snob, and so of course he didn't. Now remember when I said that the best attribute is discipline? Well, although I feel bad for William and the desk situation, he is not disciplined at all. This dude never vacuums, never cleans after himself. I don't even think he showers because I take cold ones every morning and the next day, every time the handle is untouched. At the beginning, he'd never use the trash. He'd only put it in a grocery bag and leave it on the balcony. When I told him to stop putting trash on the balcony because it made us look like pigs, he started to use the trash can, only to start over with the grocery bag, but this time only leaving it in the corner of the kitchen. The worst part is, he wasn't even putting his trash in the bag. He was throwing it. He would always stain the walls with the juices from his leftover food. We have designated spots at the dining table that we never really determined, but if you look at his table set, it's always stained, covered in crumbs. One evening, we were each making our dinners, and he asked me for a favor. I pointed out at the counter where he was making his food and said something like, "I accept if you stop leaving crumbs," and he got mad at me, saying stuff like, "You really think I leave a mess everywhere?" Well, he cleaned it, and, well, anyways, the next day the crumbs were back. He always leaves his plate on the counter. He burned the oven mitt and never cleans the floor when he drops stuff on it. He does, however, immediately come help me when he hears me turn the vacuum on, so I guess that's cool. But I'm 100% positive that he's doing it so that I just don't get mad that I'm doing everything myself. And there's another thing about William that shouldn't bother me, but if I were to do it, I'd be heavily putting myself in question. It's that his routine is so off that he basically lives during the night. He wakes up at 1 p.m., skips breakfast, hits lunch at 4 and dinner at 2, and when he isn't practicing or eating, he just plays Fortnite all day. He doesn't have a job or go to school, just Fortnite. Every time I wake up at like 2 in the morning to go to the bathroom, I just hear his controller. At least he's not screaming at the game. And once he came up to me and said he has trouble sleeping and that he might get sleeping pills. If you are in perfectly good health, do not start taking medicine to help you get things done. But I don't think he realizes that blasting blue LEDs, staying in your room, and keeping the radiator on 40 degrees Celsius all day is optimal for your health. Now, I know that I've pointed out the little things, but he did make things harder twice. The first time was when he forgot about the pipe and the bucket, which doubled the damage the kitchen floor had already endured. I was away at my parents' house for a week, and when I came back, I swear I almost had a heart attack. The second time was when he lost the vacuum converter because the cable isn't compatible with our sockets. So we attach a little converter at the end and yup, he lost it. I told him to look, but he couldn't find it. I looked and even snuck into his room to try and find it because I lost trust in people after what Jim did with my headphones. So couldn't vacuum for a week because I couldn't find one in any store, and as I was about to order one online, he just randomly finds it in one of his pockets. Like, come on, man. Anyway, although I'm just trashing these guys at this point, sometimes I'll give it to them. It's fun to be around them. And as I grow older, I realize that people are meant to have connections. People are meant to socialize. So I'm thankful that I get to live with, well, at least one guy. And yesterday we built Legos together and ate pizza. So really, you can always find enjoyable things when times are bad. Anyway, all this to say that you should respect the ones that provide for you. By that, I mean your parents. They've worked hard to achieve living standards, and the least you can do is help out by cleaning after yourself and respecting their requests for chores. If you have a roof over your head, always respect everything that's beneath it, because it's keeping you sane, warm, and fed. Anyways, if you've made it this far, consider subscribing. Thanks.